Behind the Built Environment, the podcast from BESA, the UK's leading trade body for the building engineering services sector.
Hello, I'm David Frise, Chief Executive of BESA, and welcome to Behind the Built Environment, the podcast where I delve into the major issues facing our industry through in-depth conversations with key industry leaders. Join us as we explore the trends, challenges, and innovations shaping the future of the built environment. And today our guest is Suzannah Nichol. Welcome, Suzannah.
Thank you very much, David.
Suzannah is the Chief Executive of Build UK, the leading representative body for the UK construction industry. Her passion for construction began with a site visit during work experience, leading her to study construction management and begin her career as a site engineer. She later qualified in health and safety and went on to lead the National Specialist Contractors Council. In 2015, Suzannah spearheaded the creation of Build UK by merging key organisations, uniting the industry under one voice. Under her leadership, Build UK has driven major industry improvements, including better payment practices through benchmarking and the introduction of the Common Assessment Standard. Suzannah is a respected voice in government, the media, and across industry bodies. She holds an MBE 2005 and an OBE 2024 for services to construction. Her leadership roles include serving on the Construction Leadership Council, Building Advisory Committee, Women's Business Council, and others. A strong advocate for flexible working, she also one of TimeWise's first power part-timers. Again, welcome, Suzannah.
Thank you.
We like to kick off with quickfire. Yes, no.
Okay.
It's more difficult than it looks on this one. So here we go. Will the building safety regime be delivered in the next 10 years? Should say fully delivered.
No.
Will we ever not have a skills crisis in construction?
Yes, but not a crisis.
Can the industry help deliver the government's targets for growth and house building?
Yes.
Are buildings safer now than they were before the Grenfell disaster?
Yes.
Has collaboration across the sector improved since the formation of Build UK?
Yes.
And finally, one for our members. Will cash retentions ever be abolished?
I'd like to say yes.
So would I. And I know our members would. First of all, how did you come into the industry? What was it that drew you into construction, and what held you in construction, shall we say?
Back in the days when at school you did work experience, I did 2 weeks work experience, a week in a children's nursery. I thought I might like to work with children. 1 week in a nursery put me off that. I went out on a week's work experience with a friend's dad who was an estate agent. And one of the days he took me out on a house building site. I presume he was responsible for selling the houses. And as soon as I walked on site, the noise, the smells, the look, I just knew there and then I wanted to be part of that. So I went home to my parents. My father's a police officer, my mother's a nurse, and said, I want to get into construction. And this is before the days of Google and the internet. But we found a company willing to sponsor me, and I toddled off to Liverpool University to do a construction management degree. And I've loved it ever since.
Yeah, I wonder how many people have had that experience of the first time they went on a building site and they loved it. But that's great to hear. And no regrets since.
None at all. I was out yesterday on HS2 Old Oak Common project, part of our Open Doors initiative, and I had that same feeling. And this is now 30-something years later. And I just love the buzz, love seeing what we do, seeing what we contribute to society. I pretty much enjoy every day I go to work. I think I'm really lucky in that, but there's not a day that I've regretted joining the construction industry.
Well, that's great to hear. So Build UK reaches a significant milestone this year, which is 10 years. Could you tell us, why was it created, and what would you say are the organisation's most important achievements?
It was created, if I look back about 17, 18 years ago, when I was sitting around tables, particularly in front of government, with an ever-changing array of ministers. And the industry would sit down with its various voices and bodies and essentially argue amongst itself in front of the minister of the day, which gave them complete license for them to make the decision. And I think the industry should be ones making the decision. A lot of what we do, a lot of what we could change is within our gift. So I sat there thinking about how we could do this differently. The first step was to start organising the industry before it went to the meetings, work out what we agreed on and talk about that, not the things that we disagreed on. And then there came the opportunity to bring together initially that what we call the core contracting supply chain, the major contractors, the tier one contractors, and the specialist supply chain, which I represented. And there was an opportunity with two people, Sir James Waits, who was chair of the tier one contractors group, and Kevin Louch, who was chair of the specialists, to do something different, to actually say, shall we bring everybody together? We then have the difficult conversations around the same table, but we work out what we agree on. And actually, most businesses at their core, we agree on the same things. We want financially resilient, good, strong, safe businesses that employ people, that deliver great buildings, and we grow as a sector together. And I often say we fight over the slice of the pie, whereas if we grow that pie, there's much more for everybody. So that's what led to the creation of Build UK. And to answer the second part of that question, I think people thought it would be more difficult than it was. Right at the beginning, there were a few voices who said, you'll never do it. You'll never come together. Within 9 months, both parties had said, yes, let's give it a go. It's almost what could possibly, what's the worst that could happen? Having the people, everybody around the table immediately changed the conversation. And it was really refreshing. Yeah, there's difficult conversations. You mentioned retentions earlier. We still haven't resolved that, but we've made steps forward in it. We've fundamentally changed the conversation on payment, and we've improved payment metrics. So you ask, what have we done in that time? We've improved payment metrics. Our members, when we started benchmarking them, and transparency is key. When you start to put things in a league table, it starts to drive different behaviours. Our members have improved their average payment terms from 45 days. Now it sits at 29. That's big. That's in the last 7 years. We've introduced a common assessment standard. So we've started to unravel the very complicated landscape of pre-qualification. I think there were 21 schemes. You now can get the common assessment standard from recognised assessment bodies. And it teed the industry up for when the Building Safety Act came in. We didn't have to start for a new scheme looking at organisational capability. We said, you know what, we've got one of those. And a lot of people are signed up to it. We added in the building safety changes, the questions. So we hit the ground running, which is a first for the industry, to be lined up, ready to go. And everybody saying, yes, we can do this.
That's one of the big things, for BESA members around that common assessment standard. How do you see that operating in the future? Many of our members have multiple accreditations. Is that how you see it continuing, or is there a better way?
Absolutely not. The objective is you should have the common assessment standard, and that will be recognised by clients, contractors. Everything in construction is a long process. We're a huge industry. We all want the same objective, or most people, but we often try and get there in the most complicated way. I often say in construction, why have one piece of paper when you can have 10? So what we've done so far is we now have government recognises the common assessment standard. So the public sector is encouraged and advised to use the common assessment standard. And we're seeing that. We've just updated it for the new Procurement Act. Almost all of our contractor members now require the common assessment standard. The challenge comes in trickling that down through every division and every department in every contractor. So they ask for the common assessment standard, and stopping that construction not invented here syndrome. So we like the common assessment standard, but we want a few of our own questions. And it's saying, stop, bring the questions to the table. If they're valid and everybody wants them, we'll consider incorporating them. Stop adding layers just for the sake of it, and having those open conversations. So I see in the future that will be the requirement, the common assessment standard. It's in some of the frameworks now. It's in the government's biggest framework. It's been used by MHCLG for the cladding remediation project. So we're getting there. There's a huge role for the supply chain here as well. When they're asked for something and they've got the common assessment standard, they should turn around and say, we've got the common assessment standard. We've jumped through that. We've achieved that. And then they should come and tell you, and they can come and tell me, and we can go and have that conversation saying, why are you asking for this? And often it's not really understood why. And I think we can do a huge amount in saying you don't need to do that. This is the industry accepted standard. Now let's focus on something else that's really going to make a difference.
That's one area where the industry duplicates a lot, and therefore that costs a lot of money and adds no real value. Productivity is one of the key areas you've focused on. Where do you see the kind of easy wins? Well, I think you've just discussed there are no easy wins in construction, but where's the point of attack on productivity? Because we have lamentable productivity, not just in construction, but in the UK generally.
We have huge waste in construction. When people talk about productivity, the challenge is everybody sees it as slightly different reasons for it, different definition of it. Duplication is one way, and we find that all the time, where we'll issue a simple industry standard that the majority sign up to, and everybody says, oh, we'll just add our own little bit to it. So we have to try and stop that mentality and demonstrating how wasteful it is. I'd much rather, for instance, on pre-qualification or on demonstrating organisational capability, people said, what will really make the difference on site? What will make us safer? What will improve the standard? It's not filling out another piece of paper. It's paying for whether you bring back your clock of works out on site. It's spending more time upfront in the design of your project. So you know it complies with building regulations. You've considered all the issues. You've modelled it. You've used BIM. Every time we do something that's waste, maybe we should actually start to say that. But this is incredibly wasteful. How can we do it differently? So that common terminology. But you see it everywhere. From the lack of use of technology on site, we could be so much more productive with some real simple adoptions of technology. Online forms rather than paper forms, up to some massive big decisions such as sorting out design problems before we get on site, and then we're reworking out on site.
Yeah, we often start projects too soon, and therefore we're into build and design rather than design
Completely
and build.
agree.
Yeah. There's an ongoing conversation around the need for the industry to develop a new culture, and not least because of its response to the Building Safety Act. But what practical steps do we need to take to turn that into a reality, do you think?
Changing a culture is a really difficult thing to do. Again, everybody thinks you mean something different. And I often talk about if you want to change something, which is turning a big cog, you need to turn lots of smaller cogs to get that big cog turning. And the industry is reasonably compliant. It likes structure. It likes rules as a principle. So looking at some of those smaller things that make people's lives better, take competence. It's really difficult to turn the big wheel on making sure everybody's competent if we don't have the standards in place, not everybody's checking cards when they go on site, not everybody is clear on what qualification is good looks like. And when you have people saying, I've got 40 years experience in the industry, I'm fine. So addressing each of those little cogs and making a difference there actually starts to turn what some people would call the culture cog, the culture wheel. So by doing some of the smaller things, the pieces of the jigsaw, you will change the culture. You don't change a culture by saying, we need to change a culture.
No, indeed. And there is a kind of a cognitive dissonance in the industry, the difference between what people say they do and what they actually do. And I guess the reporting piece around the payment league tables shows what actually happens rather than what they say happens. I've just come back from the US. There was a huge, to the MCA conference, which is our equivalent in the US, a lot of talk about AI and how they are developing AI tools for back office function, but also in sort of engineering functions. Do you see the use of AI being used in construction a great deal more, and particularly around maybe that reporting, the difference between what you say you do and what actually happens?
The potential is huge, not just in reporting and some of the more ways we think of, the easy ways. Out on site yesterday, they're talking about using drones to deliver. They're talking about where you could have automatic paint sprayers. So you'll no longer be looking for people to paint the wall. You'll be looking for people to operate the equipment that paints the wall. We are behind the curve in that. There's a whole range of reasons. Construction's high risk to change things. Change is so big, you'll only find out it's not working when you're into what could be a 2, 3, 4, 5 year project. So it's quite massive to actually take the step and say we're going to do something different, untested on this project. That's part of our challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity. So I absolutely believe that going forward, we will look back a bit like we've all got a phone. I no longer carry an A to Z. I no longer carry a credit card. I don't even carry money these days. You know, if I can't pay on my watch, I'm not buying. That's technology, that's AI that has crept into our lives that I didn't even know I need, but I now wouldn't be without. And I truly believe we've got that huge potential in construction. The fact that we require lots of small firms to make that investment is our big challenge. We need to say what would make the biggest difference, and everybody lean in and say, do you know what, we're going to do that first.
They had an interesting slogan saying AI will not put you out of business, but a company using AI might.
Absolutely. People are, first of all, we have got a skill shortage, we've got a labour shortage. So worrying about it taking jobs absolutely should not be top of our list. I think the skills will change. And I suspect that will play into the next generation as well, who are much more used to running their life on a digital platform. So inviting them in to operate equipment that paints walls is probably a much more attractive proposition than inviting them in to paint the walls. So again, huge opportunity that will also then back to reduce our waste, drive our productivity. I'm back to it. It's quite exciting working in this sector.
We touched earlier about the skills crisis, shall we say, and you've talked already about open doors and going out to the HS2 site yesterday. Can you tell us a bit about HS2? Open Doors rather than HS2, but Open Doors, what it's about and how that's going to help us with skills shortages.
Open Doors is an initiative run by Build UK where our members and others open up their, not just construction sites, that's the main, but we open up offices, workplaces, we've got some virtual events, we've got plant yards, depots, anything and everything, where we open them up across a week and young people, particularly schools, colleges, universities we target, but also anybody in the community can come on a live construction workplace and see what we get up to. We have so many jobs in construction that we find it difficult to explain, in a 30-minute careers talk. It's really difficult. So bringing those young people out on site and showing them what goes on means they start to ask the questions, they start to see the range of opportunities. And we know from our research that 88% of our visitors to an Open Doors site would then consider a career in construction. So it's that first step from their journey from education into employment, which is really difficult in this country. Even yesterday, I had a group of college students join me and they didn't really know what they were up to. By the time they'd heard from people on HS2, they'd seen the project, they were buzzing. And the kind of things I was saying, well, have you had any work experience? Well, no. Right, you need to get out and get some work experience. But they were much more excited going back to their college course because they could see what they could be. The next step for us is when they leave is saying, and this is your next step. And we now have to build that because it's really difficult to get a job in construction. Got a skills crisis, but we make it really difficult for people to join us. And trust me, people want to join us. We do not have a recruitment problem. We do not have an attraction problem. We've got a lot of young people on courses. They just can't make that step from that course into the industry. And Open Doors is part of that. And it gets the employers engaged as well. Employers are seeing that potential. And we often find they find their next apprentice on those Open Doors visits because somebody comes up and says, I'd love to work here. And they say, happy days. Our apprenticeship programme starts in a few weeks. Here's the application form. So it really connects the industry with people we want to join the industry.
The average age, I think, is in the 50s in the industry.
Yep.
And we've talked a bit about culture change and how the industry is developing. Is it a generational change that's going to be required before we really start to see shall we say, a purely digital modern industry in the form that we all want to see?
I'm not sure life changes quite like that. There's lots of pockets of people of all ages who are doing amazing. Our industry does amazing, fantastic things. I saw that yesterday out on the site visit, and my colleagues in Build UK have been out and about and are coming back full of what they've seen out on site. There are ways that we can help ourselves. We can look after our current workforce better, demonstrate to them the value that they're delivering. People really undervalue what we do as construction. We take buildings for granted. We don't understand, or we find it difficult to explain. People sometimes aren't that interested in how things are put together. I believe we're missing a trick with our older workers, not getting them into college when they can no longer work out on site. They've got to be the best people to go into college and inspire that next generation and talk about all the good things that we do. and share some of those traditional ways of working, the good traditional ways of working, but pass on the skills that they've got and get that next generation excited about doing the same thing. And digital's part of that. A couple of the jobs you see out on site, you sit there going, we still do that by hand. There's got to be a solution to it. And the next generation coming through will be the ones who say, well, I wouldn't do it like that. Okay, tell us the answer. So there's waves, there's layers. It will change. And I suspect that in 10 years' time, we'll look back and go, did we really used to do that? At least I hope so.
Well, that was one of my questions, actually. The differences between sort of 10 years ago and now, I think if you went back, you'd be going, good Lord, did we used to do that? Do you see any massive difference between when you formed Build UK and now? Significantly. So you went on site presumably 10 years ago and now. Would it be like going back in a time capsule?
I think they do say that if the Victorians were alive, they'd be able to come and build a house, because we pretty much still build houses. They've got a bit more tech in them, but we still build houses the way the Victorians build houses. There are changes. Where you really see it is in health and safety, is in welfare facilities out on site. I was on the site I was on yesterday. I think it was 2 kilometres long. It was spotless. It was just a beautiful project to be out on. Yeah, there were some new technologies there, the way they were pouring concrete, for example, some of the precast coming out on site, some of the, just seeing the tunnel boring machine. You talk about advances in technology. There's too much that's the same, I would say, but there are some things that we do differently. We just need to move more at pace. But the only way to do that is everybody to stop rowing their own boat down the Thames. We might get to Isleworth for a pint and say, we're all going to play to our strengths and get on a liner and we're going to go to New York. And that requires even more leaning in and everybody saying, if we're going to fix 3 things, what would make the biggest difference? Do those and then move on to the next 3. And that's the bit I'd love to see the industry doing more of.
Indeed. Well, we're trying to do that with yourselves and BESA. We've done some research recently about how well understood the Building Safety Act is. And I guess not surprisingly, it wasn't particularly well understood as you go further down the supply chain. But the shocking detail to me was the lack of understanding of clients. And many of them considered that it didn't apply to them because they weren't involved in HRBs. And it led me to sort of say that actually it feels more like the Construction Safety Act, not the Building Safety Act. Is that something you're seeing?
I do believe there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot to take in. And I come back to the theory about shifting a larger cog and some smaller cogs. And I would say to people, what is your role in this? What do you have to do? When we talk about the Building Safety Act, it's a lot of legislation. You try and read through it. And I'm used to reading legislation. I understand, hopefully, quite a bit of this. And it hurts my brain. Just trying to understand what the requirements are, what that looks like, how do you deliver it? It is not easy. And we've got an average reading age of 11 in our industry. So why we think writing 90-page reports and giving them complicated legislation is going to change behaviour, I've honestly got no idea. So I would say, where do you sit? First of all, the Building Safety Act applies to all buildings. So just because you're not working on an HRB, it applies to everybody. There are additional requirements for HRB, so maybe that's the way to look at it. But look at what are the cogs that apply to you. So within your specialist contractors, are they demonstrating their organisational capability? Are they organised? Have they got the common assessment standard? Are they showing that to their clients? What occupations do they employ? Are those people trained? Have they got the right skills? Are they behaving appropriately out on site? What are the building regulations that apply to their bit of work? Are they bang up to date on those? Do they understand them? Are they delivering work in accordance with those building regulations? And are they able to easily demonstrate to their clients, this is our standard, this is what we do, this is how I'm meeting that standard whilst I'm out on site? And then sectors, I think this is where trade bodies such as BESA really come into their own. You actually look across your members and say, what are the common bits of information that we need to provide to our clients for their Gateway 2 application, for the Gateway 3 application, and for the Golden Thread? How do we make that consistent across our members so they are providing the right information that is easily understandable? So not trying to understand the whole Building Safety Act would be a good start, what do I have to do differently, and how am I doing that within my organisation? Because then you're doing your bit, and if we add all that together, you're then actually getting the Building Safety Act moving forward.
Which is what we're trying to do with our Play It Safe campaign, for example, is to break it down into, so what is your role and how does it impact you? The critical thing is that 90% of us spend 90% of our time in a building, so it really matters if buildings work. And I think it's a source of huge frustration to our members when they see that buildings don't necessarily work because it's been value engineered or bought on price. We've made a big play on competence and can you do the job? And our technical audit is robust, and we've actually suspended quite a few members over the last couple of years for their failure to attain that standard. But our members will say, well, it's not always being asked for. Do you think that will change? And we've designed it so that for a client or a main contractor, it fulfills their duty of care. You select a BESA member, you have carried out your duty of care in, are they competent to do the job? Can they do it?
I would completely subscribe to that. I'm a complete advocate of, well, I would be in my role of that, the role of the trade association and membership of that. And part of our future work is how do we help clients and contractors recognise and understand that value? Again, I think sometimes we make it a bit complicated. We're working with BESA and a number of our other members to look at how we make that more consistent. So they understand what being a member of BESA is, and they say, that's a good thing. So if I've got the Common Assessment Standard and membership of BESA, and I know they may become one, we've actually gone a long way down our due diligence to ensure that company is competent. The simple question to a contractor or client is, why would you use an organisation that's not a member of BESA? Because if you use the BESA member, they've done a lot of the work for you. If you don't, what are you doing to ensure they are competent? I suspect at some point there will be either a building safety regulator prosecution or case where they will say to a client, you didn't assess and confirm the competence or the organisational capability of that organisation. I think that will wake a few people up. And it's not difficult for clients and contractors to do. We don't need to make it so complicated. So in the future, for me, that would be really simple. I'd love to stand on a platform and say, why did you use a non-Build UK member?
I have to talk a little bit about payment because so many of our members are spending too much of their time chasing money that's due to them. And it's not a value-adding activity, it's a value-destroying activity. It robs them of their time and working capital. Where do you think we're going with that? Is there some light at the end of the tunnel for our members?
We're heading in the right direction in construction. Look, the nature of business, it is always going to be commercial. I cannot change an individual company's payment terms. Your members have much more power in saying, I'm not going to work for you because you don't pay me on time, therefore I can't deliver. And you're back to that. It sucks the productivity out of a project. It increases waste both in time, and it's incredibly frustrating. Why you would not pay for a service. The challenge in construction is, again, it gets quite complicated with valuations, with sign-offs. And again, I think that comes down to you design work. Sometimes we don't quite even know what we're meant to be constructing. So how can somebody tell you whether you've constructed what you said you were going? And you kind of end up in this loop. We achieve more with our benchmarking, that transparency, and holding a mirror up to companies who would say to me, but Suze, I pay on time. When we showed them their figures, some went, well, where'd you get those from? Well, your FD, you submitted them. And they were quite surprised because I think they convinced themselves that their payment terms were good. There is a shift coming. And again, maybe digital systems will start to change this. It's no longer the checks in the post. I think we still have checks, don't we? I think some people are still paid by checks.
Yeah.
But it's those cogs again. So government has committed to enforcing payment performance on its projects. Contractors will have to pay 95% of their invoices within 60 days or they won't get to work for the public sector. The light is now on government. That spotlight is on government. Okay. Are you enforcing that? Who is working on your projects that is not complying with that requirement, and what you're going to do about it? And our benchmarking has really helped. The conversations on payment 10 years ago were adversarial. It was a tit for tat. It was on the front page of the construction media. Now it's much less combative. It is much more about, right, we need to do something different, or understanding and rolling behind it. And the metrics on retentions have come in. So from later this year, you'll start to see companies having to report on how much retention they have withheld from them, but how much they are withholding from others. You'll start to see where the money sticks. And I come back to your members have a lot more power to their elbow than I think sometimes they realise. I know it's brave to say I'm not going to work for you, but at some point that is a business decision you make to work for somebody who is going to pay you or isn't going to pay you. And we make it easy because we show you exactly what their payment terms are.
Just to make sure I've understood this, if we could just summarise. So you've been going 10 years. The ambition is to have not a single voice, but have a coordinated voice for construction, and that's beginning to work. You see progress in a number of areas, particularly around the competence assessment standard to reduce the costs of PQ. We're seeing open doors as a huge success and driving new entrants and kids into the industry by opening up the industry. Actually, while you were speaking, I was thinking, actually, I've got to get my staff to go around here, my colleagues, because actually they would benefit from that massively. And on payment, a bit of light possibly at the end of the tunnel with change of government. There's something will hopefully come forth on that. Have I summarised? I think, have I missed anything out from that?
Well, while you're saying that, I think the one thing I would really like to mention is the way the industry behaved during COVID. So exactly as you've talked about more coordination, that's a really nice way of doing it. The industry stayed open, working safely throughout COVID because we'd got the industry under one umbrella. We wrote the site operating procedures. I stood in front of the Prime Minister's advisor, well, probably down the line to the Prime Minister's advisor, and said, we're staying open. We're going to do it safely. We've got some site operating procedures. And they said, can you get everybody to do it? And I said, yes. I think I probably crossed everything I'd got when I said that. And the industry did it because they were all in the same place. They all needed the same outcome. And that demonstrated to me that the common objective is the same, ultimately, when you come down to it. But the industry, when the prize is big enough, can all work together and make a difference.
I think everybody goes to site or starts a job with the view of delivering the best they can, and we kind of get in the way of helping them to deliver that. Final question. So what does the next 10 years hold for Build UK? And are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future? I think I know the answer to that.
Well, I'm always optimistic, David. You know that. There is still a lot to do, but it's moving in the right direction and it is gathering pace. And under the current government, they're clearly ambitious. You talk about, homes and infrastructures at the heart of government. So that's a big win for the industry. We've taken a lot of time, but I think it demonstrates our efforts we're right at the heart of government, talking to Treasury, talking to MHCLG. They want this to work. They want more homes. They want more infrastructure. It's a long way from podium to project, so we've still got to deliver that. So there's huge opportunity. It is now up to the industry to stop the duplication, to say, do you know what? We can deliver this, but we've got to look at how we are going to do it, not how we used to do it.
Suzannah Nichol, Chief Executive of Build UK, thank you very much for coming in today.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And now on to the podcast news. BESA Academy has introduced a fully online health, safety and environment test for managers and supervisors, providing a convenient and accessible way to meet skill card requirements. The 45-minute test is tailored to professionals in the HVCA world and can be taken remotely with secure online proctoring. It's a key step towards obtaining a gold or black skill card. The BESA Industry Awards 2025 are now open for entries and it's your time to shine. Whether you're an apprentice, engineer, employer or innovator, these awards celebrate the very best in building engineering services, with categories recognising technical excellence, commitment to training and outstanding contributions to the industry. There's something for everyone. Don't miss the chance to showcase your achievements and gain recognition for you and your team. Enter now at theawardsthebesa.com. and be part of the biggest celebration in the BESA calendar on the 16th of October at the Brewery, London. And talking of which, this year's BESA annual conference will be focused on forward thinking. It'll be about innovation, sustainability, and how to deliver a safer built environment for all. Stay ahead of the game, connect with like-minded peers, learn from live sessions, and stay up to date with industry trends by securing your tickets today. There are a limited number of early bird tickets available, so grab yours now on the BESA website. Thank you for tuning in to Behind the Built Environment. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more in-depth conversations with industry leaders. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and share with your colleagues. Stay connected with BESA with the latest updates and insights into our industry. And until next time, my name is David Frise, and this has been Behind the Built Environment. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Built Environment podcast from BESA. If you like what you heard today, then please follow and rate us on your favourite podcast app. Come and join us over on LinkedIn, BESA Group, and carry on the conversation. And if you want to find out more about joining the BESA community, then please visit thebesa.com to start your journey with us today.